Welcome to another adventure in my tiny garage. Car has entered winter mode. I know, everybody raves about Subarus in the winter. This thing absolutely hates the winter. I don't know, what's going up with it, but everything freezes on this thing. It started with, the doors went open, the locks got too cold, basically. They actually wouldn't physically unlock. Not like the doors are frozen shut. The locks wouldn't work. So, that was the start. Then it started with the power steering would cut out mid turn, and it's because the power steering fluid got too cold. So when I got in, I'd have to crank the wheel back and forth a couple times to warm up the power steering fluid. The transmission got too cold. It was really sluggish on the shifts. The brakes got too cold to where when I first had to stop, it was almost like ABS was fighting you. Because the brakes were too cold. I had to pump the brakes a couple times to get that going. So, car's in winter mode. It's parked in the garage for the winter. It's up on some tire blocks that are, the rounded ones that keep you from getting flat spots while the car's sitting. And what we're going to do is a couple little maintenance things. So part of it being cold, like I said, the locks froze. I got stuck out of the car one day. And I tried, every single door, including the rear hatch. When I tried the rear hatch, the handle broke. Common problem that I've come to find out. Easy fix. The handle's about 140 with shipping, looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and get that ordered. I also just ordered a new timing belt. I've already replaced the timing belt, but it wasn't a cheap one, but it was still, budget. It was about $90 for the timing belt that I got. And what I'm going with now is the Gates one that I should have gotten in the first place. Big difference between what I have and what I'm getting is the Gates one has, lines on the belt, so you can line it up with the timing marks on your cam, on your engine. While I'm in there, we're also going to change the water pump and a new timing belt guide, I believe it's called. I got a metal one to replace the factory plastic one, so it'll ideally keep the timing from jumping again, because even though it's better than when I first got it, I'm still definitely having some timing issues with, taking a couple times to crank over before it starts sometimes. Not every time, because sometimes it's on. And then while I'm driving, lots of misfiring, lots of backfiring. So we're going to take care of that timing belt and take care of those problems. Stay tuned. I'm going to start with the timing belt first. If you're only here for the rear hatch handle, I'll put a timestamp down in the description. You can skip ahead. You can skip all this. As far as the timing belt goes, I'm not sure how much I'm going to get done right now. Not because it's, overly difficult or time consuming, but because it is really cold. It's like 14 degrees outside. And in the garage here, I have just a heater like right above me, but it's only got it up to, maybe like 30 in here. So, we'll be taking lots of breaks. First thing we're going to need to do is get the radiator out. To do that, we're taking off the little reservoir here. We're going to drain the radiator. So to drain the radiator, you have, two options really. You have the way that Subaru intended you to do it, and then you have the chaos way. The way Subaru intended is that little drain plug right down there, which is now out of focus. It's a bitch to get to because you have this right here that is metal, part of the frame, and it's just hard to get your hand down through there. You can go underneath the car and kind of hook up around the subframe there and then get to it from there. Either way, you're going to get coolant everywhere on this because it's a slow trickle that comes out right on top of the subframe. But you can, easily get a little catch can or something underneath there, catch all the coolant. So the chaos way, I'll grab my light here, is right there where my thumb is, just to pull off the lower radiator hose and just hope for the best. So if you do it that way, you're going to get absolutely covered. But it'll be done fast. I've already done this, and draining it this way does take quite a bit. And at some point, what I end up having to do is, you got to undo these anyway to get the radiator out. But undo those, get the radiator tilted at an angle, let it drain even more. Okay, I'm going to try something out here with the camera. I'm not sure if it'll have switched to vertical or not. I don't have a tripod still, so you're underneath the light. So anyway, first thing we gotta do, this little reservoir here, there's a hose going into the top of it on the top. Hose going into the top on the top. Makes sense, huh? So you just pull that out. That's as easy as that. Then there's supposed to be a bolt or something holding it in right here and right here. When I got the car, they were already gone. There's zip ties holding it in. So we'll go this route. Then it's just kind of in there's like a hole catching it on the bottom. So you just wiggle it out of there. You can pull it on out. So also on the bottom of the radiator, there's two plugs. There's going to be one on the driver's side, and then where you can't see off camera here, same area, there's one on the passenger side too. Got it. Is it really working on a car if you're not swearing at it? Off camera here, all you're missing is me getting the passenger side one. Time to get in, drain the coolant. Just make sure you have something good to drain it into. Obviously, I wrote not for oil all over this thing because it's not for oil. I only use this for coolant. And, if the coolant's good enough, I can just open this up, dump it right back in. Alright, so that's draining. As you can see, I didn't take that little white plug all the way out. You don't have to. This is about how fast it's going to drain. I sped it up a little bit just by undoing the top cap here. And now we just wait for this to drain. If you're completely new to cars, never really done much with it, and you're unfamiliar with coolant, recommend just wearing gloves for this. And if you have, any kind of pets, this will kill them real quick. So you're just trying to make sure you don't step in it, track it through your house, all that kind of stuff. All right, so that's already draining slower down there, not because it's empty, but just because, it's a slow drain from there. So what we're going to do now to help it out, get your 13 millimeter. We're going to undo the two bolts on these brackets here. All right, you got your bolts out. Go ahead. There we go. That was a little tough. Pull the brackets off. I'm going to put the bolts back in the holes just so I don't lose them. All right, so with those off, radiator is free a little bit. Can pick it up a little bit. It's just like that little catch can. It's in like some little seats down there. All right, so now it's holding it up a little bit just from being able to move more. It's this top hose. Take it off. It's no problem. You shouldn't get a whole lot of stuff leaking out of there. You're going to lose your hose clamp if you knock it off, though. But, yeah, take that off. Freeze up the radiator a little more. You can get a nice tilt on there. So this has probably been going about 10 minutes now. As you can see, it is a very slow drain from down here. So like I said, if you opt for the chaos method, going quicker, just pull off that bottom hose. I don't really want to do that because I don't want to cover my garage in coolant. So that's still draining, but we can still get to prepping a little bit more to take this out. So on the passenger side, you have these two smaller hoses here. If you track them, they go all the way over here. Just got to pull those off of either end to be able to take the radiator out. And then again, this might be different on other people's that weren't put together by someone that obviously didn't know cars. But for me, my little drain for that catch can and my throttle cable or the cruise control. I'm not sure which one that is, if it's the cruise control or the throttle. But either way, those are also zip tied together. So I'm going to undo that. That'll free up the radiator from being connected to there. Another small little tip, if you see I put little dots on these, just so I know which one goes to which. Okay, so the radiator is finished draining. Now it's come to the point where I need to get off the lower radiator hose down here. To do that, first I'm going to close the drain plug, not because you have to, but just because I want to control where my coolant's going to be coming from. So when I take it off of the lower there, I don't want it to be coming out of two different areas. So I'm going to close that side. I'm going to go ahead and pull it off here. Alright, and when I take off the lower, I'm going to take it off of the engine rather than take it off of the radiator. Just, personal preference. You don't have to, but the way I try to do it is I try to keep as much connected to the part that I'm taking out as possible so that when I put it back in, I know I missed something. So like these two little hoses up here that I took off, if I were to leave them connected up there and then take them off the radiator, when I put it back, even though there's two very clear spots where they go, I might just forget those two hoses. So that's how I do it. And like I said, when you take off the lower, even though the radiator is drained, you're still going to lose quite a bit of coolant because it's coming from the engine too. Make sure you move your drain pan over. Once that lower radiator hose is off, which I didn't lose a whole lot of coolant out of there, but there are two more lines you need to get. You can see it right down there leaking. It is for the transmission cooler. So you got fluid running through those. One of them, if you can see right down there through the shroud, that little brass looking area. And then the other one, again, if you can see right down there through the shroud, even though it's out of focus, I'm sorry. Pull those two off because, again, that's not coolant in there. If you don't want to mix your coolant with oil, like I don't, because I want to hopefully be able to reuse my coolant, make sure you get other things for that to drain onto down there. But now we got the plugs undone, drained, hoses off, all the other little hoses going over here, and those cooler lines off. We should be ready to pull this radiator out of here. Shouldn't be anything else holding it up. It's still going to be leaking a little bit, so if you care about that, like I try to care about that. I got a little box off to the side here. Just make sure you set it somewhere nicely. But let's get this out of here then. One little note is these two hoses that went over here, they do snake underneath the power steering line, which has some flex, but it's a pretty rigid line. So just keep that in mind. But I'll just wiggle this out of here. It should come out. And we're free. With that radiator out of the way, you can see I still lost quite a bit of coolant on the floor. Looks like a murder scene down there, but you can also see that there is a lot more room in here. You can do this job without taking the radiator out, and obviously you have a whole lot more room if you do take it out, so I recommend doing that. But if you're really unsure yourself, you don't think you can handle that, leave it in, it's no problem. So the next step is going to be to take off your belts, the AC compressor here, and the alternator power steering. To do the AC, you just loosen up this a little bit. This is your tensioner for the AC. You can take some tension off of that, and then
recommend getting a belt tool unless you're going to replace this. If you're going to replace it, cut that off. Otherwise, these little tools here for removing and installing belts, they're like $6 on Amazon. So you can get those and be able to walk off the belt. This one is actually pretty easy. For the alternator power steering, undo that down there. Just not undo it, like take it out, just loosen it up a little bit. Loosen up this one a little bit. And get up on top here. Let's get some more light. Get up on top here, and as you start loosening this, it'll tilt the whole alternator, and then it takes off a lot of tension. You can just pull this one off by hand. Like I said, this one, if you're going to replace it, cut it off. Otherwise, get these little removal tools. Next, we need to get the crank off. As I just mentioned, that is a 22 millimeter in the middle there. And one thing you will need is this crank removal tool. So these little bolts that are on here fit into corresponding holes on the pulley there. There is a janky way you can do this too. So depends on what route you want to go. This tool is, I think it was like $25. So, you know, if you can swing it, definitely get that. But the janky way to do it is get your 22 millimeter on a breaker bar and then rotate it until it's, you know, touching the frame or touching the ground, and then crank your engine. It'll spin it, it'll break it loose. But, like I said, that is extremely janky, very dangerous. Not my recommendation. So, my recommendation, get this tool. I'm going to do my best to film this. There's really no good place to put the camera. So, like I said, you got this tool here. Find the corresponding holes, and I can turn the crank with this. Then get your 22 millimeter on a breaker, and just start spinning them both. Alright, so breaking it loose is going to be the hardest part because it's got a lot of torque. But once you do break it loose, there's honestly no reason to even use a tool on it. So that bolt just comes right out. And then this is just notched on here. Wiggle it a little bit, it'll come off. Like I said, if you look on here, there's a notch right there. There's a notch on the shaft on the engine. When you put it on, it's as simple as lining that back up. And then once you get your crank off, you need to get the belt cover off. It's just a series of, sorry, out of focus, series of 10 millimeter bolts all around. There's some that are kind of hidden underneath here, up here, all along on this side. So just remove all those 10 millimeter bolts and the belt cover will come right off. Now you got those covers off. One thing you'll notice when you're doing this is the two outer sections have longer bolts. The middle section has shorter bolts. It's as simple as just making sure you get them back in the right spot. But honestly, if you can't notice that they're different, you probably shouldn't have made it this far. Now we are inside here. I'm going to start by taking off the tensioner underneath here. That'll take all the tension off of it. You can pull this old belt off. My kit, and I think most timing belt kits, are also going to have every other pulley. If you need to replace them, go ahead. If you don't, you know, again, your judgment. Alright, so here's something I'm noticing right now. You might not be able to spot the same issue. First is, I got a crack right there. That's just where one of the bolts for the timing belt cover goes in. I don't know how that would have cracked, but yeah, what I'm noticing here is these two right here that are empty, that is supposed to be the timing belt cover, the little retentioner that keeps your timing belt from skipping. I don't have it. So, that's probably a pretty good indicator of why my timing is off. Anyway, though, got that tensioner out. It's a 13 millimeter, and like I said, that takes absolutely all the tension off, and you can just pull your belt off and toss it aside. And as mentioned, I'm going to do the water pump while I'm in here because the only way you can get to it is taking off everything we just took off. Because it's underneath here. It's held on with a bunch of 10 millimeters, and then this one right here that's empty and out of focus, I moved it up to the new one already. It was just one of the pulleys. I just didn't want to lose it. So we'll get a 10 millimeter, pull off that water pump. And it's also, you got two hoses. There we go. Now that I pointed it out, I put it in focus. You got two hoses down there. This little spout here for the lower radiator hose is also attached by some 10 millimeters. You'll have to take that off and transfer it over to the new one. And just like that, the pump is out. Again, make sure you have that catch can down there because when you pull that, it's going to throw a lot of coolant everywhere. Changing your thermostat's one of the easier jobs you can do on a car. Goes right in here on the water pump. Got the new thermostat here. If it doesn't have this rubber seal, make sure you get that rubber seal. My water pump kit came with it. Also, it came with a gasket and it came with a seal in case it didn't have it. But this side goes in, this side goes out. Doesn't matter which way is spun otherwise. Stick it on in there. Then you get your little spout, whatever you call it again, for the lower radiator hose. And put that back on there. Now your thermostat's changed. Had to do a little modifying. Notice when I was putting this in that I had an extra little spout on the left side that the one I took out didn't have. It was just capped off. So stuck a bolt in there, got a good ground, did a decent enough weld just to hold it in there, capped it off. Getting into putting in the new belt here. The Gates belt came with all of this here. You got all your new pulleys, you got your tensioner, and you got this little spacer here for when you put in the guide that we found out is missing on mine. So you have the right spacing between the belt and that guide. So I'm going to start with replacing that pulley that was down there on the water pump. Alright, so now that we got all those pulleys and gears changed out, I'm going to go ahead and start lining up our timing marks. So on the main crank here, you've got a mark right there on the crank, and you got a mark right there on the block. Over here on the passenger side, you got your cams. These ones over here, you can just spin freely, line them up. And then over here on the driver's side, you can move them a little bit, but as you get like right here, you start to, it's kind of like you're building compression basically. So there's a special tool you need on here because this timing mark right here needs to be up here. And then these two little hash marks, I keep going out of focus because of my hand. The two hash marks need to line up with these two hash marks here. So those will be right here in the middle. This line here will be over on the side there. Like I said, these ones kind of are under compression basically. So there's a special tool we're going to get for this one. But if you want to just do this by hand, you put an Allen wrench in the middle here and you can turn them and line them up. But like I said, it's basically like it's balancing on a point. Like if you get it lined up here and then you bump it just a little bit, it's like spring pressure. It'll launch and spin all the way back around. And so I got a special tool. Hang on one second. All right, so this is our special tool here. So you got this end. Let's see if I can do this while looking in the camera too. Sorry, I'm looking in the camera trying to do this. So I'll do this a little better, but basically they fit in there, and then you use here to turn it. Once you get it locked in place, tighten down this bolt, it'll lock it in place, and that'll make sure you keep your timing. This tool was, I think, like $10, so definitely recommend getting this to make it a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and
start lining all these marks up. To do your crank, you're gonna have to put the crank bolt back in and just, turn it the same way you would if you were turning over the engine.
So it's still a little bit of a fight, but I got all my marks lined up. Kept the tool in here to keep those in place. Got that one lined up. And I got these two lined up. And I also went ahead and put in the new tensioner. The tensioners, when they come, they got a little pin in here. When you actually install it, pull that pin out, it'll keep the tension then. But right now, it's loose, so you can move it around as you're getting the belt where it needs to be.
And on the belt itself, make sure you install it to where you can read the text the right way. You got this line right here, the dotted line. Line it up on the crank. As you start moving along, you have more lines. So there's your cam. Move it along, there's your cam. And then on the other side, it'll be the same thing. So get it on, route it through there the same way you took it off, and just get these lines all where they need to be. So getting the belt on isn't, like a simple job. I'm not going to lie about that. But, once it's on, get this lined up, get it on there, route it all around, line up all your marks. I found it easier to take off that pulley right down there, and then once I got it all lined up, put that back on. But, keep going around, double check all your timing marks are still on, and you should be good to go. Once you're good to go, we're going to pull the plug, take that out of there. Now that tensioner is released, no longer going to be flopping around. All right, now we're going to put this guide on that I was missing already. So the way you're going to do this is put it on, which I'm just going to put it on a little looser here. So yeah, I didn't tighten it barely at all. You're going to get that guide that came with the belt, and you're going to wedge that in there. All right, that's keeping it where it should be. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten it down the rest of the way.
All right, once you get that on there, just pull out that little guide. It was actually pretty tough to pull out of there, but it spaces it right. So we should be on.
So at this point, you're effectively done. Obviously, you just gotta, put everything back together that you took out. So get the covers back on, get the radiator in, make sure you get all your hoses connected, and you are good to go.
One big thing I almost forgot. Putting your crank pulley back on, definitely get a torque wrench. That's one that I won't even mess around with. That is torqued to 130 foot-pounds.
Moment of truth here. I've got everything put back together. I've got the radiator topped off. I've got the cap still off so I can get all the bubbles out. And let's fire it up. Oh, that sounds so much better already. Alright, so I let it run for a while. You can see that's just exhaust because it's coming back in the garage. It's not actually smoking. But, it's sounding way better. Doesn't sound like it's misfiring at all. Let it run for a while to let all the air bubbles come out of the radiator. I think we are golden here. Alright, so now to finish up this video, we're in the back of the car here. Like I said, obviously I can't open the hatch, so I had to climb in through the back, fold your seats down. So, I pulled this cover off already, but if you can see there's a little port here. Through that port, all you can get to is the lock. If you can fish your finger through enough, you can get to what you need to. But to first get your hatch open, you need to be able to get to here. Just push it down, you can open it up. Alright, once you get your hatch open, on the bottom here, there's two 12 millimeters that'll hold in your whole latch and lock assembly. There's also a 10 millimeter here that holds that in. So you can pull that whole thing out. Underneath there, you have two 10 millimeters that hold in your actual handle. And if you didn't see it before, now you can clearly see where the issue was. This little arm here that has the little clip that connects to your latch just snapped. So I got the new one here. Installation, same way you took it out. Just fish these through those holes right there. And then this little clip that's on here. Once you get your latch reinstalled, clips right onto here. And just like that, your new handle is in. This job probably took 15 minutes with stopping to film and everything. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and end off this video. I know it was a little bit longer, so thanks for sticking through it. I'll see you on the next one.